Stand by. Okay, you're
I'm
up.
gonna get rid of my participants and no, so I can't see the chat. Uh-oh.
There you go.
All
Hi.
right. Hey,
Welcome.
we're back for the new year. Woohoo! It's January. Hopefully 2021 is better than 2020, although we've had some craziness already. Anyway, thank you all for joining me, and I'm excited to share Akim again with you. Doing the long text in these compositions, even a little bit more in depth than what we got to do the first time with the compositions. It's going to be fun. When I was practicing for this class, I was like, ooh, discovering new things and being influenced a little bit more by the other alphabets like the Arabic you'll see in your handouts. I just think it's really fun, which is actually what Bergert was influenced by with the Akim. So I'm excited to share this class with you. Just a reminder that tomorrow we will not be doing the class because it's the US presidential inauguration. And so we'll resume again on Thursday and then finish on Friday. So I want to make sure everybody understands we won't be here tomorrow. Okay. All right. So let me say goodbye until the end of class. I'm going to switch over to my camera.
Hi, Julie.
There we go. And I'll get myself adjusted here. Okay. I have to turn on these lights, so hopefully they're okay for you because I won't be able to see what I'm doing if, yeah, and Karen put, that means time for homework. If you want homework, I can give you homework for the day in between. All right, so as usual, you have my contact information on your handouts down below here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see. Okay.
Great, thank you.
And please disregard the blue marks. My blue cartridge isn't working well. I have to get a new cartridge. So, and I always include my supply list in my handouts just so I can keep on track with what I've told you to get and not, miss a completely, a complete group of tools or supplies I told you to get and then not use them. So we're going to start today with just a simple, like a monoline pen, like a marker, and I'm also going to use a nib. I'm going to use my, this is my Esterbrook Vintage 788 that I like to use, but you can use any pointed nib that you want and some either Sumi or walnut ink. That's all I'm going to use today. And then I'm also going to use the translucent paper that I suggested to you. And I'm going to put my grid underneath it, okay, when we get started. So let's look at, if you have my handouts from before, I just included a very short version of the background of Akim. And the same book list that I had in my other handouts, because this book right here, The Calligraphic Line, really, really good. I highly recommend it if you want to understand a little bit more of Bergert's thinking on writing. It was translated by Brody, Neuenschwander, and Morig Bergert examples. For those of you in Europe, you probably are familiar with this museum that houses a lot of Bergert's work. But you can visit that and see some of his work online. And then again, these are some of the tools that I like to use for Akim. You don't have to use them. They're just the ones that I like to use. Okay. And I included my exemplar from the last class, which was a very simplified version of Bergert's. And I now also have an exemplar of Bergert's, and I have my version of Bergert's. Okay, so I've included this. This is new from the last time you would have taken my class. This was a more simplified version of Bergert, and now we have this version of Bergert's Akim and my version of it. So you can feel free to switch back and forth. This one is a little bit more, this is more upright, but as you know from taking variations on Akim, we slanted sometimes with this one. We stretched it a la Bergert's. This one is a little bit more, I don't know, a little organic, a little bit more organic. So we're not going to go through the alphabet at all because that was something that you saw in variations on Akim. We went through that pretty in depth. And so a lot of you I know who are calligraphers, you're already familiar with this hand. You've been doing it. People that are Zentanglers, a lot of you like the Akim for your to add into your tangles. So I know a lot of calligraphers are familiar with this. If you are a beginner and if you slipped in without me noticing that you didn't take variations on Akim, I apologize, but we are not going to go through the alphabet at all. I think only one person I caught that hadn't taken the first one. And it's not a big deal. It's just that you might be lost once we move into this, these longer texts and compositions. So this is really literally continuing from where we left off in variations on Akim. Okay. So what we're going to do is I've got the 3 pages of grids here. Page 5 is the grid based on the exemplar that I gave you on page 3. Okay. So this grid is basically the same X height, ascenders and descenders as the letters that I gave you on page 3. We're going to start with that because we're starting larger and we're going to work our way down a little bit smaller. So page 6's grid, you'll see I give you a little bit smaller of an X height and more condensed. So I didn't give you any space in between the line spaces. So you're going to go with you're going to write on here, but your ascenders and descenders are going to kind of crash over each other. So it would be like something like this. And then your G will be down here. Oh, sorry, that's not G for Akim. You know, like that. So you're not going to have any space in between. And I did it on purpose because I want this to be more textural writing. So there's going to be some having to figure out how these descenders and ascenders are going to work together as we move down the page. Okay. And then grid number 3 has no X height at all for you. It means you're going to determine the X height and you're going to determine how high your ascenders and descenders are. But again, keeping a very tight line space in between. Okay. All right. So I am going to talk about on page 8, before we get started with writing, I just wanted to share some thoughts from Burgert's Laws of Composition. In his book, The Calligraphic Line, he talks about the laws of composition. By the way, they call them Burgert's laws, but the laws of composition, his composition laws that he's talking about are actually the laws of composition in art and design. So like I learned these in graphic design. But what he's doing is he's taking these laws of composition from art and design, and he's talking about them in relation to calligraphy. And specifically in the whole idea of the calligraphic line is that he started to, you know, one of the quotes that was on page 1 or 2 here is where he was trying to get away from the Roman soldiers marching in a line, meaning these letters that we're used to seeing as upright, all perfectly cement, you know, moving along like in type or in traditional calligraphy, and trying to get into a more organic type of look in calligraphy. And so that's kind of the gist behind the Calligraphic Line book. So he's taking the laws of composition in art and design and applying them to lettering. So in art and design, we always have he calls it the formal theme. But what the theme is, there's a general look to a piece and there are rules that you apply to a piece. So for example, the theme in this particular piece that you see on page 8 is this kind of teardrop shape. Okay, that's the formal theme, if you want to call it that. You also see the teardrop shape like this. Okay, so even the way he laid out the piece is kind of within the shape of a teardrop. That's the kind of formal theme he's talking about. The graphic forms should follow that theme. And what are the graphic forms? There are the actual teardrops themselves. We also have these lines that act as kind of counterpoint to those organic teardrop shapes. Okay. And then the placement of the elements on the page is critical to a good overall layout. That's an important law in graphic design, is the way you position your piece on the page. Now, when I found this example, it didn't have a border, so I've positioned it kind of in an interesting way. You see it's not completely centered. I off-centered it with a very narrow margin on the right and a little bit wider on, I'm sorry, narrow margin on the left, wider margin on the right. So I positioned it a little bit to the left on this page. Okay. That is a more dynamic composition than if one would center something. So just so you know that that's kind of an element of good design, just to create a little bit more tension, to create a little bit more asymmetry, if you want to call it that. So these are some of the things that Burgert applies to his calligraphy. Now, he even says here, this is an interesting quote here, that composition in contrast to just lines of writing, okay? Typical like setup of either typography or traditional calligraphy. Think of an illuminated manuscript that was very rigid. Think of like a page from Gutenberg Bible, is only one approach to calligraphy. Yet it requires great precision in the creation and placement of forms. He's not saying or doing away with traditional calligraphy. He's just saying what he's trying to do is to introduce something different, a little bit more organic. And so it does require great precision in the creation and placement of forms. The calligraphic composition is therefore the most intense form of calligraphy. So yes, we require great precision in the creation and placement of forms for traditional, but we also, that applies to anything that we do that's more organic. We still can't throw the rules out the window. We still have to think about good design. We have to think about good letter formation. Clearly, even though he's using something more organic here, he's set us, he has put in place a series of rules for himself. This teardrop shape continues to repeat. He uses the vertical line as contrast. So he has totally stayed within a set of rules, even though he got more organic. So I hope you understand that. And if you don't, please feel free to ask questions. But even just one line of calligraphic lettering can be reduced composition, can be a reduced composition. So think about just writing one thing, one line. You still have to apply the same rules, okay? Even in one line of calligraphy. So hopefully you can understand that a little bit. If you want to find out more, I highly recommend you buy the book. And this is taken from pages 136 and 37. I kind of combined some of the stuff from those 2 pages there, okay? All right, but that's an excellent resource for this. So with this in mind, we're going to start writing. And I am going to be writing longer texts, and I can't write a full piece here, the time won't allow. So what I'm going to do is probably write 5 or 6 lines of text, and we're going to talk about, as I move down the page, what I'm going to do to avoid things called rivers. So I'm going to just throw this out here now, and I'll show you what I mean by it when we start to write. But in typography, we have this thing where, say this is just words on a page like this, okay? And it's not just in typography, it's in traditional calligraphy. If I were to repeat this pretty much the same, I'm going to start creating a pattern that I don't want. Okay, something like that. And if I do this again, and I just kind of break it up here, and I go here, and then I go here, and I go here, and then I go like this. What's starting to happen here? I start to see this happening here, okay? This is kind of broken up a little bit. Right here, let's just watch what happens when I go to my next line. Okay, I've got that happening right there. And if I'm not careful, this is going to continue to happen as I go down the page, if I'm not thinking about where my placement is for each line of text, okay? Right here is called a river, and you can create that in the negative way. You can also create that in a positive way. So if I were to do, say, a word like, I don't know, or like a pattern like this, where I kept keeping this small word, you know, and then I did this and like this, and like this, and like this. That pattern will start to emerge like that. And that's what rivers, that's what we use the term river. And we don't want that in our text, or either in your hand-drawn text or in typography. We do not want those. So we have to avoid this kind of thing happening. Patterns like this emerging, or patterns like this emerging, or like this. Okay.
Julie,
So that's what we're going.
are
Pardon?
rivers always vertical like that?
Rivers will happen vertically. Well, yeah, if you have a body of text like this, yeah, rivers will happen vertically down your page. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you won't, yeah, it wouldn't happen horizontally. No, they happen vertically. Good question though. All right, so that's what we want to try to avoid. So as I work my way down the page, I'm going to be thinking about that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with my grid, and I'm going to put a piece of the marker layout paper over it. Okay. You do
Julie,
not have to use the marker layout if you didn't get to buy that. You can write directly on your grid. You can put a piece of tracing paper over it. If you can see through your paper, or if you want to put it on a light box, you can try that as well. Okay. I just
Julie's
like,
using,
pardon?
Julie's using grid number 1 on page 5.
Yeah. Okay. It would be a good idea if you have some text in front of you. So in your handouts on page
21.
21. Yeah, I gave you, oh yeah, I didn't give you long enough text. So I'm going to get a different quote. Hang on a second here. If you need some long text, I did write some in those samples I gave you on pages, let's see. Page 11 has a quote from Herman Melville. I have, if you can read it, I also have a quote by Anne Frank on page 12, and then a quote by Thomas Merton, if you need some ideas. I'm going to choose something completely different. And I'm going to just open up to my little poetry book here, and I'm going to do Travel by Canoe is not a necessity. So deep. All right. So just pick a text. It doesn't, you can write whatever you want. And I'm going to use this marker, or this Uniball Vision Elite. It's just a pointed pen. And I am going to kind of use the newer version of my Akim based on Burgert's. Keep that in front of me. I'm going to use this right here. Okay. But also a version that, me, that I varied a little bit. So I'm tilting my page because that's how I have to write. Okay. All right. So Travel by Canoe. Now remember those like little flourishes that I like to do. How we talked about how I move with the pen. I'm going to be doing them on the outside of my bodies of text, throwing them off into the margins. I'm going to be very careful about where I throw my flourishes so that they're not totally crashing into one another. Although this is the grid that I do allow this for the X height. Here's my descender. Here's my ascender. So I don't really have to worry so much here about things crashing into one another. Okay. So here we go. Travel. I will do this sort of thing where I kind of connect a little bit or just stretch. Okay. Travel by canoe. Now, sometimes I'm not going to stretch, even though that's a letter that I normally would stretch, that N, because I've already stretched a C and an A here. Okay. So I'm making my X height a little bit smaller too. Canoe. is not a. Now, I've already stretched my E, and normally the E and the C are stretched. Burger will do that. He'll stretch both. I'm going to not stretch it as much because then I got another E right after it. I could go up into my E and just connect like this. Whoops, that's ugly. My double S, remember we always had that trouble with the double S's. Also notice that he's got two S's here. He's got an S like this, and he's got an S like this, okay? So that gives you that option of, I could do an S like this, and then do the S like that, and stretch it. And then do my Y. Travel by canoe is not a necessity. I'm just gonna continue on the next line now. So now this is really, really stretched out, or a lot of line space, because my next excite is right here. So I could be throwing these, I could be really extending my descenders a little bit more to really get some more things happening in between the lines here. So I'll keep that in mind as I move here. And do something like that. Will nevermore there's that stretch like that, just because this wasn't that much of a stretch above, so I don't feel, you're not going to see so much the rivers on this because we've got so much space in between here that I don't think we're going to see a pattern emerge, but we don't want that, maybe don't want that to happen. We'll see what happens here. If it does happen, it'll be a nice demonstration to show you what you shouldn't do. I'm going to try to avoid it, but we'll see what happens. Okay. B. I got an N here and an E there. I could do this because the H kind of has the same arch as the N, so I didn't want to quite do it the same there. Will nevermore be the most efficient. Most. And remember, I could throw that little crossbar on the T to the right if I want, if I felt like it was like it conflicted too much, but I left space there. I didn't connect them. I'm not connecting as much in this like I do in some of my other variations. Just kind of sticking a little bit more to the exemplar and Burgert's version.
Before you do efficient, if you're, are you going to the next line on efficient, or are you staying on the second?
Because I'm going to run out of space.
Okay, so then positive river potential, the descender on the Y, and those two L's.
Yeah, well, yeah, sort of. Yep. That could be a pattern that starts to emerge there. So yeah, we'll be careful of the F's. Well, the F's are going to happen over here. The T,
but you'll have the T over there.
Yeah, but the T is small.
Great.
So we'll see.
Great.
Now I've got a double F. So what I do usually with the double F is I might do this and change up the height. Oops. Blech. I didn't quite throw that right there. My arm hit the end of the table. That's another thing. You want to make sure that you're not, right now my arm is on the end of the table and I don't quite get the way I want to throw my flourishes there.
But you made a lot of people laugh. It's nice to hear the soundtrack of calligraphy.
Yeah. So really try not to have your arm be right now, right here, my forearm, you can see here, right there. That's my edge of my table. So I'm hitting the edge of the table and that's not a good thing. Okay. So efficient way. honestly, now I see that there's just way too much space, and I like when I condense that space. So this is, I'm writing too small for this amount of space, I think. Efficient way to. Now that's where I'll connect that right there and maybe throw the T that way, the crossbar, to get from. I'm not going to stretch that N right there. Because I'm going to do that with the E to get from one region. Let's put region here. Okay. And then to another. I'm going to do an A like that. Let's position this so you can see a little bit more.
Right. I was about to ask maybe if you can zoom out so we can see the lines, but that's good. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll analyze this after I'm done here, okay? Just to see if I created any weird patterns. One region to another, or I stretched that already and I didn't want to stretch the N again. Even from, I'm going to try to avoid doing the same thing. Do that from one, or even from one lake to another. Okay. I thought I mistakenly started repeating myself. Lake. Ooh, that's a weird T. To, I don't know. Can I fit another here? I think I might go down. No, let's not do that. I'll do it here because I already have another up there. So let's see how far I can go with this. Okay. So, all right, here are 4 lines right now. Okay. So again, I feel like there's way too much air because here I had no descenders on this line. So what that created was all this white space here with only this flourish coming up into this space, this kind of coming up in there. Little bit like Karen said, the repetition of this diagonal and here, right there. You know, I could have done something different to get away from that. Where I could have stretched this out like this, maybe. No, I wouldn't do that. I would do this probably like that, right underneath there. But other than that, I don't see too much. See, you don't see the rivers as much or the patterns as much until you start to close up your line space. Okay. So let's move on to the same quote. I'm going to continue the same quote, but I'm going to use a smaller grid. Okay. Now I'm going to use grid number 6.
Grid 2 on page 6.
All right, grid 2, page 6. Okay, and that's going to get me writing more vertically. And you're going to see now where I'm going to have to solve the problems because they're going to be closer. The lines are going to be closer together. Okay. All right, so let me come back in here. So travel. Also, I'm writing a little bit smaller. By necessity, or by canoe. I'm going to do an S like that and an S like this. And okay, so now I'm going to get into my issues with, crashing, ascenders and descenders crashing into one another. So I have to watch that. Most. I got an S here. I'm going to do that one. Efficient way to get from one region to another. Potential little river issue right here. Here's the N, here's that hump of the M, and here's the N. Okay, maybe, maybe not. We'll see what happens. Region to another. Or even from one lake to another. Or even, now I've got this descender, so I'm just going to stretch that. So I don't have to worry about anything happening there. That's even from, now I've got this F here. So what I might do is do an F like this, that kind of an F there, from one lake to another. Good. So the two anothers didn't fall right underneath each other. That's good. From one lake to another. And then there's a long M dash there, and it's anywhere. So this I'm going to have to hyphenate here. So I've got, W, W, and I've got an O, and now I've got another W starting here. I could do a W like this where I'm throwing just a little bit out into the margin. So I could do a W like that just to break it up a little bit. There, period. This would be more of a Burger A there.
What's the next line? What are the words?
A canoe trip. I don't like that right below each other like that. Yep. See how that happened right there?
Yep.
A canoe trip. Do that. Has become simply, I might do an S like that. Simply a right of oneness. So now I've got this problem here. I'm going to be having to put my O right here. So I've got kind of a gap there. A right of oneness with certain terrain. If you know your text, it's probably even better too. You don't have to keep looking over at your terrain. Now, clearly, I'm writing this on the fly. If you planned your text out, you can decide if you want to do flush left, which is what I'm doing. Everything is along the left margin, and ragged right. So that means my endings are all ragged. You can do it justified, where you stretch things out so that you end completely straight over here. You can do flush right, which means everything lines up from the right. If you're a left-hander and you do Hebrew or Arabic calligraphy, you start from the right and move this way. So those are all options that you would have to plan out as a layout. But I'm just doing flush left, ragged right now. Diversion. A diversion off the field. Off the field, an art performed.
I like that D very much.
Thanks. Yeah, sometimes I use that D. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
Art performed. Not because it is a necessity. A little bit too much space right there. I should have tucked that a little closer. But because there is value, oh, I got a because right above me. I'm not going to do the same thing there. There is value in the art itself. Okay. And then the citation is John McPhee. Okay. All right. So there we have a longer body of text. And I'm analyzing here.
Can you raise it up a drop more, please, so we see the descender on the day of John? Thank you. Great. Thanks.
Okay, so let me see here. Oh, here was where I was showing you that there's a possibility of, let me get a red pen here. You know, I could have, it doesn't look like, I mean, I could have thrown a few more of these flourishes out here. You know, perhaps this could have gone like this a little bit just to, because I really like when I do a little bit more flourishes out into the margin. You know, this could have done, I could have done here, or I could have done this V like this, maybe skip this one, done a V like that. And the same thing here. What could I have done here? Well, aside from adding a loop, which I don't want to do to that Y, there's not much going on here. I could have maybe stretched this out a little bit like that, but then I don't have enough words over here. So I'd have to replan this out so that maybe I could stretch this so I could get, you know, like if this E came all the way to the end, then I could have thrown a flourish out there. Either one of these ends could have been one, or the A could have stretched, or this S, if it was closer to the margin, I could have thrown it out like that, just to give myself a little bit more flourishing happening in my margins. Also the T, I could have gone back to a traditional T and done this, you know, something like that. All right. Now I'm looking at this strictly from a composition standpoint, not just writing a body of text, but like, what would I want to do to create a little bit more interest in this? You know, maybe throwing my flourish up like that on my B, you know, maybe doing a little bit more of that. Whoops, not quite that much, but like that. Could I have, I could move this over just a little bit to the right and bring this one down even more. You know, could have.
Can you shift your paper up?
Let me just do this here.
Thank you.
Where I could have thrown this flourish even more, and then John McPhee could have come down just a wee bit more or been smaller. Do I usually write the attribution of a quote? Yes, I do.
Do you usually write the attribution of the quote in that same scale as you did the rest of the
book? In the same scale?
Hand is what I meant.
Yeah. No, actually, I'll usually come down a little bit in size. So yeah. Might do something like this, a little bit smaller, but see, I'm using these flourishes so as a design element, so I might do something like that, a little bit smaller. Yeah, not always. I mean, sometimes I might do it in the same, usually smaller, but
usually in the same hand. Like you wouldn't do it in Romans, you would do it in the same hand.
Not always in the same hand. Nope. Sometimes I'll use, if you look at page let's see, my citations on those pieces that are on pages, well, here's one of them, page 17. This one is the Thomas Merton quote, and I used just little block caps for my citation there. Same thing here on Psalm 1. Oops. Same thing here. Psalm 117 is little block caps. This is a really bad, it's hard to see that. They're very tiny, but, and here, Thomas Merton was done in block caps. Here I use the same, but smaller, Linda. So this was written a lot smaller than that. This one I didn't add the citation. It was just a demo I did in a class and I forgot the citation on that. But I would probably do this really tiny little block caps too here. Julia Cameron.
Julie, we can't see.
Oh, sorry. The Serious Art from I don't have a citation for that one, so I would do that one in block caps probably.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. All right, so yeah, so let me zoom back out here, and I don't right here. I would want to avoid that next time. I don't like that. That my eye went to that right away. One of the things you can do is squint, and sometimes you'll see things pop out at you. Like patterns will start to pop out, or especially the white spaces will start to pop out. Possibly this right here is very similar to me. So I've got condensed, stretch. See, even though they're two different letters, the letters are switched, I still have a pattern there. I would try to avoid that the next time I wrote this out. Now I'm writing, you know, you're watching me do this, and this is how I wrote those pieces that you see in your handouts, kind of on the fly. But the Melville quote was actually written twice, and I worked out some of the issues that I found in the first time I wrote them. Although, no, actually I didn't. This one I think I left because I see this issue right here. Do, do, do. So I think I left that. Actually, I remember now, I was going to leave it because I wanted to show you what that meant, what rivers meant. This issue right here, I would avoid the next time I wrote that out. Okay. Possibly this issue right here with these two S's right below each other. So this, when you're starting to write these bodies of text, that's what I want you to be aware of. Okay. And I write it on the fly first. That's kind of what I do first. And if I were to make a more formal piece out of this, I would redo it once after I wrote the first one on the fly, and then I'd redo it again if I needed to, just to avoid certain things happening. But because they're written pretty quickly, when I'm moving, my hand is moving quickly, it's not like I want to sketch anything out. I don't want to sketch something out underneath, but I will have, like if I wrote this out again, I would have this one right at the top of my paper so that I can see and try to avoid those same mistakes, if that makes any sense. Okay. All right.
But would you have it out in front of you because you want to maintain the same line breaks then, or not for that?
Yeah, and I'm also, if I were really, really a stickler and I wanted to work out my line breaks, I'd be working out my stretches too. Like say I wanted to make this justified. So flush left, you know, I have flush left and flush right. Then I have to work out my stretches, you know, where am I going to put my stretches? Then I will use tracing paper and go over these over and over until I can get the line to completely justify. Or because I'm a graphic designer, I will scan this and I will stretch the letters myself in Photoshop, and then work it out until I can get it quite justified. That's my faster way of doing it. And then have that paper in front of me and redo it by hand with the paper in front of me and the stretches in front of me. Okay. Does that make sense? You can do it either way. You can go by tracing paper and stretching until you get to this line and you want it justified, or you can do it in Photoshop and stretch it. It's the same thing. But then you have to have your complete version where you stretched. It has to be up above your paper so that you can follow line by line, you know, what those stretches are. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll even fold this over. Say I completely worked out my stretches for this first line, and I'm going to write on my formal or my finished piece or my finished paper, whatever, my good paper for my finished piece. Then I have this line right above me and I can copy it exactly where those stretches are. Say this was my finished. So I can come right below it and see, whoops, I'm writing a little bit too big. Hold on, let me do that again. I was writing too big. Oh, that's because I have a bigger marker too. So I would have this right above me. And a lot of you guys do this already, so I know this is not new. Whoops. That way I've already worked out this space. I've worked out this space. I know. Okay. And I would just try to follow it, completely follow it. Because I've already worked out my spacing. Okay.
That's helpful to see you do that. Thank you.
All right. You can also see that that's a little bit more difficult to do because I'm going so fast. You know, I do that with my italic. Say, for example, I've worked out my spacing with my italic. Then I'm going very, very slow. When you're doing something a little bit more free form, you have to be careful. Like, you saw me stretch that too far. I went too fast with it. So you do have to be a little bit more careful when you're doing these more free form type of lettering styles, because your hand is going to get so used to that nice free rhythm that you set up. You don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose the rhythm. I think the best way though is just to work out the spacing and then keep this right above. You still have freedom to work, but you also have to know, hey, I'm getting close to that end. I don't want to get too crazy with this now. So, whoops. Be careful when I get to the end, and I might have to tighten something up or stretch something a little bit more. Well, I didn't work out this spacing.
Can you please move your paper left?
Oh, sorry. Well, no, I can't actually. In my box, but there it is. Okay. So if I had worked this out and changed this, to stretch to the end, I might have stretched more letters here, maybe, just to get to that end point there. But then I would have my paper right above me and I would just be copying what I see. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So now, where are we at time-wise here? Okay.
We're good. We have 1 hour and 10 minutes.
So I want to do one more, and we're going to do it without the X height.
This is your grid number 3 on page 7.
Yep. And I'm going to try to do a centered text. Now, the centered text is a little bit harder to do. You start with one line and then you have to kind of figure it out. Now, I'm not going to do it perfectly. I would have to work on this. I'd have to cut it apart, or I'd have to trace and move things back and forth until I got it completely centered. But I'm going to just try it. I'm going to show you and see if we can kind of get to a centered look here. Okay. That's not so important because you can work it out later, but I'm just going to try it. I'm also going to try to throw those flourishes a little bit more. Like that, okay? Now I don't have an X height to work with. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Notice I did not throw that too far down, that Y. I just don't want to create problems for myself. It would be nice if I had a flourish up here somewhere, but I don't think I have any letters I can do that with.
L, maybe the L?
No, because the next is necessity.
Oh, I'm thinking necessarily, right.
I don't want to really do it with the T. All right, so and will never more be. So I'm going to go here with the and. Remember, I'm trying to center this a little bit. And I'm going to get B in there, and then I'm going to go down to my next line. Okay. The most efficient way. Most efficient way. And it might have to stop with efficient there. I won't be able to fit way there. All right, so now I'm going to come to about right here. To get. I threw the T, the flourish that way instead. From one region to another. One. I think I'm just going to stop with region. Although, yeah, that's a little bit off center, little tiny bit, but I think if I throw in 2, I'm going to be too far off. Oh, I wasn't very careful right there. I threw those too far down. To another. To I'll do that here. To another.
So Julie, there's a question in the chat about your interword spacing. That
Interword spacing.
Right, that it's almost non-existent.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to kind of keep in with the whole idea of Bergert's, the rhythm of the heartbeat and making more of a pattern. So I'm trying not to create too much white space in between. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, again, I want these to be legible, but I also am trying to create that heartbeat rhythm. And so I'm not thinking so much about, perfect word spacing either. It's more about the look and about the rhythm that I'm trying to create. I mean, I still want you to be able to read it, but that's a good question. Yeah. If I put in too much white space, it's going to break up. I feel like it breaks up that rhythm a little too much. And you can look at some of Bergert's examples too. Let's do that real quick. Here, really, really tight. Oops, here. Really, really tight. On page 14. Those are his compositions. Hold on, let me get to his writing. Like here. Almost non-existent.
Julie's on page 10.
Yeah, this is on page 10 now. You'll see word spacing again, not very, almost non-existent. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep in flavor with what he's doing. Here he's using, well, yeah, again, barely any at all, any word spacing. He does use capitals. Well, German capitalizes words within a sentence as well, I think. Karen could probably correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure you guys capitalize things sometimes within the word in this sentence that's even not a proper noun like what we would do. So very little word spacing there. So that's why I'm doing this, because I'm trying to keep in that flavor. Good question. Way to get from one region to another, or even from one lake to another. Now I'm going to want to end this with from. So I might do that, something like that. From one lake to another. I'm going to do that here.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Did Marguerite tell us something about German?
She said there are words in German they write with a capital in the beginning, like a name.
Yeah, right. But sometimes they capitalize other, I thought, nouns within the sentence. But I don't know German, so I don't know if they're proper nouns or not. One lake to another. I'm sort of keeping centered here a little bit. I don't like that M.
Yeah.
Don't like that M. Okay.
Yeah, she said that they're proper nouns as well, Heather said.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They're nouns as well.
One lake to another. Oh, and then there's an M dash and the word anywhere. Which means the M dash is going to be, that's weird. I don't want to put it here. It's too long. Oh, yeah, I will. I'll put it there. Because it would look funny at the front, I think, here. One lake to another, anywhere. I'm going to come back out here. Now, please note that, oops, that's not supposed to be an I. I am doing my version. I am not doing Berger. I'm adding things that I do to this. A canoe trip.
That little arrow and frowny face makes it look now part of the weight of your layout.
But I don't like that M that I did there. Canoe trip has.
So it's add elements.
So so the next word is become, and I don't want to hyphenate, so it's not going to end properly. So this is where you're going to see that it's hard to do a centered composition on the fly. You have to kind of really work it out. So like this line, if I to do this again, I'm going to bump this over this way a little bit, and then become is going to be on my next line. Now I'm going to come out just a little bit further with the become. And has become so, ooh, I got a little too small on that. That's a little too small. These two letters are too small. The B I want to be small, but those are a little too small. Become simply a right of oneness okay. And then I'll go back in a little bit with certain. Terrain. A diversion is my next word, which is going to bring me too far out. So you can see that that's going to be a problem. Now I'm not going to be able to fit diversion here. It's going to, because I want to have some, it should come only to about this point right here. So I'm not going to be able to fit that. All right. So I'm going to go to the next line. I'm going to come in a little bit with this one. I didn't want to stretch that end right below that one. So I kept that one small. A diversion off. Oops. Ew, ew, ew. Don't like that. Off the field. Okay. That one got a little too long. Okay. So you can see I'm having trouble now with the centering. This will all have to be worked out again. Let's see here. What time are we
And
at?
when you work it out again, those ascenders and descenders won't be in the same place.
Correct. So you're going to have to deal with ascenders and descenders that are moving. But what you would do here is you would trace this, trace it, move it, or cut it apart, move your lines. You can also do it that way. You could cut these line by line and move them until they're perfectly centered, work it out that way. You can do it by tracing paper and moving things when you trace, or you can do it my way, which I would do in Scan It and move it around in Photoshop. And even restretch certain things in Photoshop because I can do that. Okay. So, but you can see now I'm like, this should be all over here. This is pretty much getting a little off here because I'm trying to avoid hyphenating. This is what I'm trying to do. I don't want to hyphenate my words. Okay.
And to answer your question, it's 5 after.
All right. Okay, so let's just an art performed. Well, I think what I want to do is stop now. I'm not going to do the rest of this because I want to get into the other exercises. Okay. But you can basically see what the problems are as I cannot center things perfectly on my own as I work my way down. I have to work that out. This is going to have to be worked out again in those ways that I just mentioned. Okay. All right. So quickly before we move on, I just want to make sure, do we see any rivers happening? All right. So when I'm looking at this, I see very faintly, and I'm not sure if this is going to be a problem or not, but very faintly, and I'm going to dot this. this lightness of area happening right here, where things are stretching, and there's this very slight, for me, I saw too much white space in this, and it created that kind of a pattern for me. Okay, it gets broken up here and it's broken there, but here it created that river for me in my eyes. So I'll have to watch out for that when I redo this. Also, I'm looking here. I don't like this happening here. Those 3 stretches of those A's right there.
Mhm.
Okay. Anybody see anything else? Don't like this right here. Stretch this region right in here. Don't like the little stretch I did there. That S got a little wonky on the end. Those are things that I would work out later. But anything else? Anything glaring to anyone? What I'd really like is for you to tell me if you see anything glaring.
I mean, glaring, but not a river in your third line from the bottom, and become simply that stretch of the M and then the E and then the S from become.
Yeah, so 3 stretches happening in a row. Yep,
Right.
I try to
Right.
avoid that usually. Yep, good. Anybody else see anything?
Yeah, Julie, I don't see anything. It looks fine to me. I just wonder if you would talk a little bit about the overall shape. It doesn't really seem like a teardrop, and yet I know you said you wanted to center it, but
Oh, no. I wasn't trying for
the overall.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't trying for a teardrop, by the way. No. But I was trying for centered. I wanted to make sure it was centered. Yeah.
So do you like the fact that it goes in and out and it ends smaller? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, yeah, when things are centered, this is kind of a normal thing. When you center text, whoops. If it were correct, it would be doing this, right? Yeah. Now that's a shape that you can think about too. That is for sure a shape that you can think about. I centered quite, I came in quite a bit, almost like a little vase shape. But you can think about that when you're centering things, think about that outside shape. Do you want to create something like this, kind of shape? That could even be part of your overall design. Things like this will happen when you're doing centering. Okay. But that's a good question, Linda. Yeah. Was there somebody else that I thought?
Yeah, there's several questions in the chat. So one of the questions is, how about the O's in lines 4, 5, and 6? Just wondering.
The O's in 4, 5, and 6 right here. Those O's or these?
Either one, actually. Or the OO, the ones you just did, could also go the OOE below it from Lake.
From Lake.
The E below the 2 O's instead of going off on the diagonal. But yes, those O's that are almost stacked above each other.
These 3.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you can do to avoid that, I could have stretched my N a little bit further. Now, Berger does stretch his O's sometimes, as do I sometimes. So you can get away with that by stretching an O, just to kind of avoid that issue. Yeah, that's good.
And Julie, the M that you put your little unhappy face in the arrow, can you talk about why you don't care for it?
Oh, the curve. This curve right here, I just thought it was a little too silly. I would like a curve more like this, something like that. This one curved like this, too curly. I like a curve like this, not like this.
Thank you. There's another question. Oneness, the word oneness in the third to last line seems to be a problem word.
Yep, that's a problem word because of those double S's and also the stretch of the E. So,
and the N-E and E are the same in how you execute them.
So the oneness, we could do something like that and then do an E like that to kind of to break that up a little bit. An S that's more upright and then stretch that. as remember, we did these exercises and variations on Akim, especially with the double S's. How are we going to solve that? How will we solve that problem? So this is a trouble word for me as well. Yeah, good. That's,
And
we'll
also,
have to
by the way,
solve that.
just for your information, there's a note here that you missed a word in the first line.
Travel by canoe is not necessity. Oh, thank you. Right. Thank you.
So thank you for the,
Yeah, good.
okay.
Yeah,
So
these are all good things, because my job to do right now is not to show you a beautiful piece of calligraphy. It's to teach you how to see so that you can do this yourself. So yeah, good. These are good. These are the problems you'll run into, and then we have to solve them. So good that I make these mistakes. All right. Anything else? Anybody else?
Yeah, there's a question about terrain in the second to last line, that it looks like a wave.
It looks like a wave.
That R goes into that A.
Yeah. So we could, those R's can be thrown higher. And then the A brought underneath a little bit more. That could be a way to solve that problem. We could also do terrain. Whoops, let's do it like this. And then I could bring that R up like that. Maybe not stretch that I out or that A out as much, and do something like that. Okay.
Thank you. And Julie, which pen is that Uniball? There's no more questions about the text itself.
Okay. The Uniball Vision Elite.
Thank you. I'll put that in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a real fine point. I bought the, well, actually, it doesn't even say what, maybe this is the only point it comes in. It's made in Japan, Uniball. It doesn't have any number on it, just Japan Uniball Vision Elite.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And we are caught up in the chat.
Okay, cool. All right, so those are the kinds of things that we want to analyze as we work out these kinds of texts, okay? All right, let's move on to page 13 is where I've given some examples. So I said, Burgert based his Akim on Arabic stretches, Arabic writing. And so I went online and found a couple of things that we might want to try. This is Mongolian, by the way. This isn't Arabic down here. This is Kufic, and this is Arabic. I think Kufic is a form of Arabic, I think. Mm-hmm. All right, so a lot of Burgert's writing is influenced by stretches and rhythm found in Arabic. I have asked you to find some rhythmic writing that appeals to you. That's for your homework, okay? And analyze it based on Burgert's laws that we talked about earlier. And examples could be Western alphabets, Arabic, or other hands. And then, but it's nice if they're not Western, if they're foreign, because you're going to look at them as shapes rather than as letters. And Brody did this. We just had a workshop with Brody last weekend, and he had us looking at some Arabic to do some other crazy writing. And it's really interesting. I've done this with several instructors, one of them being Massimo Palello. We did some Arabic. We looked at Arabic forms, and then we tried to find Western letters in them or Western shapes. And then we created an alphabet from that. And we did that sort of with Brody this past weekend as well. But what I really want you to do is not look at so much the shapes, but the rhythms that are created. And you can use, similar shapes too, but the rhythm, the pattern that's created, and see if we can mimic that. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. In exercise here, we're going to look, you see, we have a small X height. So let's kind of analyze this. We have a small X height right here, right? And again, I don't know Arabic, so I'm just assuming this is, I'm going to look at this as shapes. This is my body or my X height here, okay? And then these are my ascenders. These are the descenders. Now that we see what's happening with the descenders, they're kind of going on these diagonals, and they're not coming very far down. So we'll keep that in mind. When we do our descenders, and this is now we're getting away from creating text that will be legible. We're looking now more as the idea of that line of calligraphy being a composition in itself, which is what I quoted Burgert in there on page, where's his little quote? Right here. So page 8, we're thinking of one line of calligraphic lettering, a reduced composition. So I'm not going to be so much concerned that this is legible as it is a beautiful composition, right? So some of our features on this, we have the tall ascenders, right? We have a very small X height. We have diagonal to the left, descenders. Okay. You can use these dot elements if you want as elements in your design. The dots or dashes or diamonds or whatever they are. Dots, dashes can be elements or design elements. Okay. What else? Spacing. We have stretches and then we have condensed. So we have stretch, condensed, stretched, condensed. Okay. We have that kind of diacritical marks. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. So look at the stretching, condensed. We have that rhythm, that heartbeat rhythm that Burgert likes so much. Okay. So we have the stretch and condense thing happening, right? Stretch and condense. So those are some of the features that I want to try now, okay? So I'm going to work on my practice paper, which is my Pecon sulfite paper that I like so much. And I believe, did I tell you that in your handouts? Yes, I did. So the paper that I like to use is a medium weight Pecon sulfite drawing paper. You don't need this, but what is nice about it is it has a bit of texture. It also doesn't bleed with ink. But you can use anything you want. But I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and I'm going to use my pointed nib, and I'm going to use some ink, and I'm going to try to mimic this exercise right here, this little thing. I'm going to use just a small phrase from my handouts. And I'm going to write, let's see here. In one line of calligraphy, I'm going to write.
I thought that's what you were saying. I'm going to write in one line of calligraphy.
No. I'm going to write, this world is but a canvas to our imagination. Okay. Oh, wait. I want to make sure I have some descenders. So that doesn't, I don't have any descenders in that line. All right, let's make sure we have some descenders. Fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. Okay.
By the way, Julie's looking at the quotes on page 21, options for you.
Fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. And I'm going to try to mimic this. I need to take this out of my handout so I can see it right above me. This is what I'm talking about, so I can actually see it above me. I just tore this out of my handouts. Right. I'm putting it right above me here.
And thank you for zooming.
All right, so I've got tall ascenders. I've got small X height. Fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. Now, I'm not trying to make it look exactly like this. I'm taking these features and I'm going to try to make a line of calligraphy that's doing these things. And still keeping with the features of Akim too, don't forget. I'm going to stretch my U.
Paper.
Thank you. Now that's a descender. And I've done this. So let's see. Do I want to go this way with my P? Kind of should, right? That's my rule. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit lower and not follow that same curve as I just did with my Y. My A. And now I'll do a different P.
With the.
Let's do my stretch this way.
Breathings. Breathings, plural.
Now that S, I'm going to do it like kind of like this shape here. But do I do it this way or do I write it this way? I'm going to go this way.
Of your heart.
I wish I would have come out just a bit more with this turn right there. Okay, that's all right. Of
Your heart. And before heart, if you could just shift your page a drop to the left.
I can't go any further. I have to do
Okay.
this there.
That works. Thank you.
Whoops. Nope. My camera's balancing on my box here. Oops, that filled in. And then my T could be right there. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about. Just trying to see if we can write a line of text that mimics this. Now, you could really mimic it by using a broad edge tool. I'm using a pointed pen right here, but we could mimic it even more by using, let's see if I have one here. I only have a real fine point one here. Oh, no. Oh, I don't have any broad edge tools here. But anyway, that's what, oh, here's one. We could actually mimic this even more to get that look with a broad edge tool. You know, so doing something like this. If you wanted to. But I don't know if I put that on your list or not, but anyway, you can grab one if you wanted and try it. Oops.
Can you zoom out, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so you'll get more of that look if you do this with a broad edge tool.
Would you consider in mimicking on some of those crossbars using that very thin diagonal?
Yeah, you could do that. Like I did the thin diagonal here with the fill your paper.
Right, with those diacritical marks.
Yeah. For sure, you can do. Oh, my nib is catching on here.
Like right there, for example. Oh, okay.
Oh, well, yeah, you could go up with this like that.
That's exactly what I was.
R. Yeah,
right.
For sure. Yeah. So trying that with a broad edge tool too can be an option where you're going to get it much more to that, you know, and then for fun, you could come in and add little, you know, stuff like that. If you wanted to, you could do little umlaut there kind of thing. Again, what you're trying to do is now we're trying to create a composition. When I did this with Massimo, we actually added those little diamonds and the little diacritical marks just as a design element in our text. Okay, so that's that one. Now we're going to try this one. Thick. We're going to analyze this one. This one has a lot of whatever this is. I don't know if this is letter spacing or word spacing. I'm not sure if this is actually a word right here because I don't know Kufic. Is this word spacing or letter spacing? And I don't know. So we can treat our, let's just say it's word spacing. We can add a lot of spacing between our words. Clearly, you know, I'm going to be, if I use a pointed nib, I'm not going to get the same look. So I can come in with my broad edge tool and use that to kind of create this look. So if I wanted to, I could just do, or if you have I did say I was only going to use my pointed nib, but
yes, you did.
I know. I would have to draw this, but if you just wanted this look, fill your paper with the breathings of your
Can you
heart.
zoom out, please, Julie?
Yeah, just a second.
Thank you.
So if I wanted just this look, what would I do? So the F, so here I don't have as high. Oh, I was going to analyze this. So our ascenders and descenders are not very high. Our X height is here. My ascenders are not that much higher than my, I know this is very dark. Hold on. My ascenders are not very high. My descenders are not very deep. Also, when you see the descenders starting to go and the ascenders, you see that there's not a lot of line space in between because they're crashing into each other's space. So keep that in mind. But we're going to just write one.
Your counters are filled in.
The counters are filled in. That's correct. So let's just do this here. Let me zoom out. So what would that look like? And I'll just use my pointed nib for now and we'll fill it in. We've got that kind of diagonal there. I'm not going to go very high with this. We also have this really nice curve on some of this. I mean, I could mimic it this way with the F. Yeah, let me do that. So the F could be like this.
There are also some Latin letters that really just jump out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like here's a D, a lowercase d.
Exactly.
These are little
backwards
little E's. We have A's.
There's S's.
Yeah, S's. Yep.
W's. Yeah.
So this we will do. Here's my X height. So I'm going to go low with my crossbar on my F. And then my I, you know, I could do like this. I'm going to stretch my I and do that.
And then you have a double L.
Yeah. So I can do.
You know what, Julie, before you do it.
What?
Count down lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Count down to the 9th line.
This one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that could be my double L.
And your
a little higher
horizontal and your I can go right into it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm actually going up above a little bit with my. We can bring that in there. Then we can do this. Whoops, got something on my nib.
Yeah.
So these are becoming right now, because I'm using a pointed pen, I'm drawing these letters. But you can do that. You can draw them, or you can use a broad edge tool. I'm going to.
If you want to continue your paper.
Yeah, I'm looking for a good Y.
There's some cool descenders. Look at the very last line. The most left character. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then let's see, how do I want to handle just maybe like that, or maybe with a little bit more, just like that. And then the O, I'm going to use kind of this teardroppy shape a little bit. Filled in. U.
Right next to that same character you used is the Y.
Yeah, kind of like this.
Wow, what a fun exercise. And to find letters.
But, you know, now I'm drawing these letters. I still want to try to keep an Akim look to them. And then we could go, let's see, with that R. We don't do much going up with anything here. I've got a lot of ink on this. I'm just going to do something like that. And then again, coming down. Now because I'm drawing these letters, I'm losing the rhythmic idea of Akim, but I'm also trying to create a composition. So keep that in mind. We're not doing a rhythmic thing right now. I could do this faster and forget about my thicks and thins, and then just do something like this, where I figure out the rhythm, you know, like this.
And while you're doing that, Heather wrote that this Kufic example is also perfectly justified, written right to left.
It is?
And like,
yep.
Yeah.
This is a justified piece. Thank you for that. You know, pardon?
No, and she wrote that lines 5 and 6 may be elongated letters, not components of the form.
Okay. I'm going to just continue.
Very cool.
Yeah. My A. And then how do we want to do it? Another P. Because I'm looking at this and analyzing it as I'm going along, I don't have a rhythm set yet, but once I figure it out, I can go a little bit faster, you know. The E, we have that backwards kind of teardrop shaped thing going like that. Okay. So you can see where you can start to get those letter forms, but it's the rhythm. Fill your paper with, could do this.
The breathings.
I want to do that H. Just this kind of whoops. The
breathings.
and then that A. And then at G, I'll do something like, maybe something like this.
Breathings, plural.
And then you see that S in there is kind of like this. And it's fatter, obviously, but I'm not going to do it like that right now. Breathings
Of your
heart.
heart.
And then that Y, how did I do that Y? We'll do that again. I think I might stretch that a little bit more. And then you can go back in and fill these in, thicken them up a little bit.
And if you can shift your paper left, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
I can't quite, so I'll just hold my camera here.
That's okay.
Okay, so there's that kind of a rhythm of this in one line. Clearly, you know, because I'm not filling these in. If I were to go back in and, you know, thicken this up, then I would start to see a little bit more of that pattern. Like this. Oops. I'm holding my, let me get back here. So when I fill this in, I'll start to get more of this look. And you can try this with a larger tool. It might work a little bit better for you. Whoa. Okay, that's not working very well. I think I need to make these a little bit bigger. Anyway, get a bigger tool and use that maybe to fill in or draw your letter forms a little bit bigger, because mine are filling in right now when I'm doing them small like this. You know, maybe starting off like this and going a little bit bigger might help with this.
You can shift your paper. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I should have drawn these a little bit bigger. Anyway, that's kind of what I was trying to get at with this, is trying to look at these rhythms and seeing if we can mimic them with the Akim. I had to go very slowly there. The next one is this Mongolian brush script, which is actually this picture right here. The Mongolian is written from top to bottom, and this man is right-handed that was writing, and he's using a pointed brush. This is pointed brush. But I thought that we could try to mimic our Akim by looking at it. This one, if we look at it, is happening with kind of a left slant to the left. And we could do, looking at that, we also see that because it's pointed brush, I'm not going to get the same feel as I'm doing with the pointed nib, but some of you might want to try, if you have a pointed brush, you can try it. Now I'm going to do this just a little bit larger then. So if I had, you can also use your pointed nib. I'm going to just try the brush here. It's kind of spiky, the look to it. Let's see, where's a good F?
Just, Julie, your fingers are completely blocking the point. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm slanting to the left.
Fill your paper.
I'm trying to write small with a bigger brush. I should get a smaller brush.
Right, that X height is really teeny compared to the ascenders and descenders.
Yeah, right.
With the breathings.
I can see this brush is not trained.
How do you train a brush, Julie?
How do I train a brush? Well, this little guy is not trained. Good question. So when I roll it in my hand like this, and if it doesn't come to a nice point without being, like I can see it split. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Not focused, yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's hard to
focus on your
see.
paper, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to see that right now. There's some splitting going on. So I just grabbed this brush just to see if I can mimic this. It's splitting. Yeah. It's not really working very well. I'm not getting fines.
Breathings of your heart. And when you next dip, if you can please zoom out. Thank you.
How do we throw that S in this way here? Let's do. Kind of spiky. Something like that, maybe.
Of your heart.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm gonna just not gonna be able to fit it here. Let's see here. I was testing my brush over here on the side. Fill your paper with the breathings. Let's just go in here. Um, a brush marker? Sure. Yeah, you can try using a brush marker. I didn't put that on for today on today's list. I just said I was going to use a pointed nib in my pen, but I just thought, oh, maybe I'll try this right now. It's mostly the look, I mean, the stretching that I want you to see, and the, again, condense, 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 and then we've got a stretch, condense, a lot of condensing actually, and then stretching.
So Wild Woman, now that you have this text like this in the two lines, that one is long and one is short to the left, how would you go about adding William Wordsworth? This, if you wanted to.
Well, you know, this is where I wanted this to be all in one line.
No, I know, but it's not.
Right, I know. But if this were the composition,
yes,
you know, I would maybe put a little dot here. And then I don't know if I don't think I'd use the same hand as this. Yeah, I don't know. This is not really, I'm not really thinking of it. I was thinking of all one line here, but to put the citation, I might do William Wordsworth right down here in little.
thank you.
Maybe something like that. Okay, what time are we at? About 10 minutes.
We have 12 minutes. The alarm's about to go off for 10-minute warning.
Okay. So that is, let's see, what was on page 13, 14? What's on page 14? No. Okay, that goes into our next thing.
That's tomorrow. So
this is the kind of thing where we can use other scripts, other hands to kind of help us just come up with something a little bit different. You know, if I were to do this again with a better brush, I kind of have the feel for where I'm going with it now. You know, I might do something like this, get a little bit freer with it. Maybe throw my flourishes a little bit more. Just being inspired by more of the freedom of that piece. But first you have to do it slowly just to understand kind of what's happening. And then maybe you can increase your speed. And then my S, something like that. Breathings.
of your heart.
Of and I can't finish it because I'm running out of paper. I'll just go off. of your okay. So that's where I would just kind of start going back into my Akim, my rhythm, thinking of my rhythm. Here I stretched, I got really stretched nice and wide there. And then I knew I was getting close to the end and I didn't do those stretches as much. So now, you know, when I analyze this more free form look, you know, like I love the openness of this right here, but then I started to get too tight here, you know, knowing I was coming to the end of something. So, you know, thinking about that, I would stretch, you know, maybe even stretch this a little bit more here, stretch this a little bit more here. Again, right in here, I feel like we've got some nice condensing going on, but I need some more stretches like I do at the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of what I was hoping, that you could just look at these things and get some inspiration from them and then try some new things, okay? Try some new lines of text. All right, are there any questions? Where are we at? We got 8 minutes left.
8 minutes. We're currently caught up in the chat. May I ask a question of my own?
Yes.
So this Mongolian brush script that you just did, that actually I just turned my hand out 90 degrees clockwise so that I'm looking at it as a vertical execution. So all of a sudden I'm thinking in my head about, let's just the first 2 words, right? Fill your. If actually I were to imagine the letters rotated 90 degrees, so I'm trying to write them from top to bottom, but then when I'm done, I would rotate my page 90 degrees counterclockwise to actually see them read correctly. So they would actually be written top to bottom.
But if you did it this way, you'd be writing.
So your F would be, your top would be horizontal. No.
Oh,
I'm talking
you're saying go this way with it.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's hard.
No, your F is correct and now the I is backwards.
Right, no, I know. The I has to do this.
That's exactly what I mean. Yes.
Yeah, well, you could do it that way. Yep.
Really get the flavor of that hand, right? That is exactly what I meant.
Yeah, that's kind of hard.
Right? But it sure does change the shape of the strokes.
Yeah, it does. Your
paper.
So for those of you who are left-handers, now I'm kind of feeling your pain here.
Right. Wild woman, can you please zoom out?
Yeah. So yeah, so that's a weird way of doing it. You're doing it this way, or you can do them this way.
Right. Exactly.
You can do it whichever way is easier for you to pull the stroke. Like that, you could do it that way too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which in a strange way makes your strokes more fluid.
Yeah. So that's a really good exercise there.
Right? I want to do that.
This is a hard one. That's a hard one to do. That's a hard one.
Okay, but now look how that looks. Now turn your page and look at your fill your paper.
Yeah.
That is so pretty and fluid, the top one.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to do. Yeah, this one's wobbly. Blah.
Okay, thank you all for indulging a private.
So yeah, if you guys want to even try that, you could try doing it the way it was meant to be written, which was vertical. All right, cool. Any questions?
We are caught up in the chat. However, we are at the last 5 minutes. So if anyone has a question and would like to unmute yourself with your question, or you can also put it in the chat. Oh, I got a thanks to me for asking. You're welcome. Yeah, I was dying to see her do that. Okay, so everyone is welcome to go to gallery view.
If you still want me to demonstrate something, I can do that.
Yes, and you can feel free to put questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you don't have background noise going on. Wow, everyone is so peaceful.
Okay, so just a
Julie,
few.
can you please review the homework?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So for tomorrow, if you want homework, you can do lining some nice paper. Maybe if you have a light box and you want to do thinner paper that you can see your grid lines through it, or you can line some nice paper. Let's see, Karen, you are spotlighted for me.
I should, oh, you're on speaker view. Go to gallery view.
Okay. So you can line some nice paper. Like if you want to work on black paper with white, use your pointed pen or a pointed brush with some white wash. You can try that. Doing some longer pieces of text like I did earlier, solving those problems of your margins. Maybe trying one piece and then trying it again to see if you can work out your spacing. That's up to you. If you want to do homework, you can. But I would say lining some nice paper and doing a longer text. And then focusing on what?
Wild woman, excuse me for a minute. When you say lining the good paper, do you have a preference or recommendation if it should be in the distances of grids 1, 2, or 3?
You can use my spacing grids. You can use your own if you want. If you're going to work a lot larger, then I would say give yourself a little bit more, line space. Mine, I think, are half an inch. I think mine are half an inch apart. Yeah, they're half an inch apart, but you can do it however you want. If you want to work with a bigger tool, you might need a little bit more space. Like if you want to work with a broad edge tool or a pointed brush, you might need some more space. So however it is that you want to do that. And then you do the long text, and you can also try it first on some practice paper, work your problems out, and then go to your good paper. It's up to you. Okay. I think that's it for homework. And then on Thursday, what we're going to look at is pages 14. So we're going to move on to compositions. And you've already done some of these smaller compositions. You remember when we did variations on Akim, we did some very small word phrases. So we are going to move into some of those compositions, but we're going to focus a little bit differently on some of them. We're going to analyze some of Burgert's compositions. We will try to mimic them, but what I really want to get us to is some longer compositions like what we see on pages 16. You see two of my pieces that are a little bit longer than what we did before. The one at the bottom of page 16, which is Serious Art is Born from Serious Play, that one's shorter. That's a shorter composition. That's taken from that last class you did with me. But on page 17, you'll see there's a lot more text in the compositions. And then page 18 is what I really want to try to do. Again, mimicking some of these foreign scripts. They're foreign to me anyway. And page
We're going to
19.
have to wait till Friday for that.
Yeah, so, but what we'll do on Thursday is we'll mimic one or two of the compositions on pages 14 to 17. And then some exercises on pages, well, no, we will get to page 18 and 19. But Friday we will probably finish off the exercises on pages 18 and 19. And then we're going to work on compositions that involve both a small body of text, the longer text, and then and fit it into one of the compositions. Okay. So we're going to kind of combine both exercises, do a body of text, a long body of text, and work that into a kind of more abstract composition. All right. Sound cool?
Great.
You can unmute yourselves if you want. Anybody has a question?
A sample of that last one?
No, I don't. A sample where I work in a small body of text with a composition?
Yeah.
No, I
Oh,
don't.
you kind of, there are things like that in the handouts.
Well, I don't have one specifically in there, but I was going to create one for you.
You're so good.
Um,
Julie's going to do homework.
Yeah, but that's a good question. Yeah, I don't have a sample of that, but I will create one for you. Yeah, I don't think there are any in there.
And Julie, if you don't mind, what your suggestions for homework, if you could also please put that in the email later that has the link to the recording. in
Yeah.
a few hours. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
very
I will
much.
create a sample or two for you that shows what I'm talking about before then.
Thank you.
But that was kind of a surprise thing that I kind of wanted to do as we kind of moved along. But I thought about it this morning and I thought, well, I'll mention it as something we're going to do. Yeah, because if you ever taken any classes with Mike Gold, Mike Gold does some of he'll do these larger bodies of text, and then he kind of fits these little small little text blocks into the larger body of text. That's kind of the what I'm thinking we're going to do. So, and I kind of wanted to do that on the fly, not have it be something that you guys thought out. But anyway, I leaked it. So if you want to come up with a
You
composition
leaked it.
for that,
She's a leaker. She's a leaker.
I want these things in class to happen on the fly. I don't like, as you know, I don't like these kind of classes, these more organic classes to be things where we think too much, but that we brainstorm and we use the time in class to brainstorm. And then you can go back in your studios and play with the layouts and move things around and all of that. What I really want to do is be an idea person for you. And I want to show you the ideas. I want to brainstorm them for you. I want to make the mistakes so that you can see how I solve these things the way I normally think. So that's kind of what I look at my classes as being, these like exploratory couple of hours where I can explore, I can do these on the fly for you. You can see how I solve those problems, because this is actually how I work. So I have to solve these problems, and sometimes I don't do them very well. Sometimes they don't work out. Sometimes they do. And so that's kind of what I am trying to teach people, is how to think and not be afraid to explore. There's fear involved in trying new things sometimes. It's like, oh, I don't want to mess up my sheet of paper. It's good paper. Oh, I don't want to waste my ink. Well, I'm kind of beyond that now. I'm kind of beyond that thinking. So I'm not afraid to try new things, and sometimes they look good. I mean, in the Brody class I just took, I have about, I don't know how many pages that I did. Most of them you'll never see because I was working something out and it just didn't look good. And I mean, if you were in the class, you would have seen them, but it's just, that's my process. But I'll get to something that I actually like by this process of making a lot of mistakes. So don't be afraid to make the mistakes. Okay.
Julie, if I might, it's Akim S. Can I show a sample that's on my wall here of Mike Gold's?
Yeah, show it.
Okay, so I'm going to spotlight myself. You're looking, do you see that?
Can you bring it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll unspotlight myself. Everyone's welcome to go back to gallery view. I'm not sure if I'm wearing pajama bottoms.
Oh, okay. Well, just take off turn your video off for a second. Go grab it.
At least she's not naked.
Right? Oh, I've seen people do crazy things, right? Okay, I took that.
I don't want to see any pubic hair.
Never. Oh my gosh. Never a dull moment in my classes, I think.
Oh my goodness, Julie, you got to stop the recording now.
Oh, should I stop the recording?
As you wish, my dear, as you